So the commandment we find in question today, the commandment about the Sabbath day, the third commandment, we go back to Deuteronomy 5. Here's the text that they're interpreting. God says to the Israelites, "Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work, you or your son, your daughter, or male or female slave, or your ox or donkey, or any livestock, or the resident alien in your town, so that your male and female slave may rest as well as you. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to keep the Sabbath day." A little bit longer than we usually remember when we think about the commandments. An interesting thing about this commandment, when we think about the Sabbath, we think about going to church. You know, back in the day, and I know of at least one farmer in our congregation, it meant on Sunday, it doesn't matter if it's harvest or plant time. I'm sorry, but I don't work on this day. I'll plant on Monday. I'll harvest on Monday. And this commandment initially was for the Israelites, and it was in a time where what they did on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, was they worked, and they did some more work, and then they worked. Their whole life around work. Imagine when they were slaves in Egypt. All they did was work. All they did was work. They'd sleep so they could get back at it the next day, but work, 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 and more work. And so we see a commandment that says, no. 6 days you get to work. But here on this seventh day, you will rest. You will love God. Think about how freeing that would be for a people. How freeing it would be to know, oh, I actually get a day in which I don't have to do back-breaking work. And so I want to point out the point that Jesus gets to today and the point that God gets to in his third commandment is that remembering the Sabbath day and keeping it holy is just as much about justice as it is about reverence. It's just as much about truly living into that love and being loved by God as it is about making sure you're spending time worshiping God. And so we're asked, do we give God our reverence on a regular basis? Do we give God and ourselves such justice on a regular basis? Do we rest in God on a regular basis? Now, interestingly enough, today's not my Sabbath day. It's your Sabbath day. I work on Sundays. That's what being a called and ordained pastor is about. I get to lead the worship service so that you can sit, you can rest and worship God. My Sabbath day is Monday. That's my time off. And this last Monday, I had the privilege and the honor of getting to walk 27 holes of golf and just really relax. And so I carried my clubs for 27 holes of golf. And I got to do it with some pretty good people, I would say anyways. So I walked 9, and then later in the day I walked 18. And as I walked 9, my chest was up. I was feeling good. It was a flat course. Had some bad shots, had some good shots, but all in all, I was feeling good. My legs were feeling good. And then we got to the 18 holes. Again, first few holes were feeling good. Then that bag started to feel a little heavier. Then my shots started to get a little worse. By hole 10 and 11 and 12, I don't seem to be knowing what's going on with my game. And so even though I'm with a great group of people, I notice I keep just staring at the ground, yelling at myself in my head, going, come on, just keep your head down. Just swing normally. What's wrong with you? Why can't you just hit a gosh darn club? What the heck's your problem? And I'm getting tense, and that bag gets heavier and heavier. I'm bending over more and more until finally on the 14th hole, I miss a 3-foot putt. I pick up my ball, and I chuck it. I was mad. I was done. I was tired. It was hot on Monday. And so I had to step away from the course to go pick up that ball. Furious. Nose still down. I stopped talking to people about hole 10 because I was just so mad at myself and so concentrated on how mad I was and how bad I was playing. And then I went and walked to go get the ball. Stepped away from the game. Took a step back. And I suddenly realized I'm walking to go pick up a golf ball. I'm walking because I got so mad at a game that I took a golf ball in front of 4 other grown human beings and decided to chuck it 20 yards. This is a game. This isn't that important. What are you doing? God, you're a spaz. What's wrong with you? And then I took a breath. So I went, you know what? It is a game. Let's take a breath. I spent all that time bending over, staring at the ground, just holding on to my clubs. And so I stood up straight. Took a deep breath. Used one of my favorite mantras, which is my version of the Jesus prayer. Jesus Christ, Son of God, forgive me, a sinner. I did it about 5 or 6 more times. I got my breath back. I picked my chest up. I realized that I'm just playing a game. I have good company. Let's go to the next hole. Nice and relaxed. And sure enough, with a nice relaxed driver swing, I ripped the heck out of that ball, and I kept it right in the fairway. If you aren't catching along, there's an analogy for life in there. Sometimes our lives can get so busy with work, with family, with activities, and it seems there's no time for rest. There's no time for Sabbath. That tension builds up like a stone being placed on our backs. And the more we don't acknowledge the stone, the more we just keep our heads down, bending, looking at the ground, the bigger that stone gets, the bigger that and heavier that stone gets on our backs. And this backbreaking lifestyle of keeping our nose to the grindstone means we never get the chance to look up. If all we ever do is look to our next activity, look to our next thing, look and just keep our head down, we never get to look up. We never get to look up to God, to the heavens. We never get to look up to the cross that Jesus Christ died for us on. We never get to step away and realize the bigger picture that life on earth may be fun, it may be important what we do, but there's a bigger picture. And in that bigger picture, Jesus Christ has freed us from death and sin. Just as he freed the woman from her ailment and allowed her to look up and see the Son of God and praise and rejoice God, so too God gives us the opportunity to enact the Sabbath, to take part in the Sabbath, to rest in God. And the interesting thing about this text is a lot of people look at it as, oh look, Sunday worship isn't so important. Jesus healed, let's not worry about Sabbath. No, that's wrong. And you can see it in the explanation found in your bulletins. This isn't about Jesus breaking the Sabbath. Jesus didn't break the Sabbath because he wasn't doing work, as in life work. He was doing God's work. He was doing the work of God. He was healing a woman so that she could praise God. That's not work. Jesus was keeping the Sabbath day holy by doing holy things in the name of God. That's why this text, if you remember last year, God's Work Our Hands Sunday, Deanna preached on this text. It was Mark or Matthew's version, with the big idea that we can still do work on Sundays, but not our regular work. What kind of holy work can we do? What kind of love can we share? What kind of work of God can we do with our hands? And the amazing thing is when you help out somebody, when you do God's work, Just like rest, it's uplifting. It really is uplifting. Helping out another human being is another way that we can notice that that stone on our backs is just a little bit lighter, a little less heavy. So today's text does not support us ignoring the Sabbath. Instead, Jesus expands for us what it means to keep the Sabbath holy. We do so by worshiping God in reverence like we do today. We do so by allowing ourselves to rest in God and in Jesus, but also by doing the work of God on earth when it presents itself, especially on our Sabbath day. Now, Martin Luther understood something very simple. Just like I came to know when Meg started working at a nursing home. You can't take every day off. Those people need your help. Those people need to be served. There are times when it doesn't work to just come on a Sunday morning and worship God and give your Sabbath time to reverencing God. And so there's a call for us to look for Sabbath moments. If we're too busy to come worship and reverence God, then during our week, it's important for us to look for Sabbath moments. Moments that provide rest. Moments where we can reverence God. Moments where we can step back and realize God's love for us. Moments when we can enact God's justice for the world. Because even if for a moment we can feel God's power uplifting us, uplifting the world, making sure we are provided for, even if for a moment we can recognize that God's all-saving love is active in the world and in our lives. Even if for a moment when we can allow God to cradle us, to make us feel safe, to let us know that we are indeed a child of God, even if for a moment we can do that, we're reminded of the most important thing of all, that God loves you and you are God's. So I think I've talked enough. I invite us to now sing this truth together as we turn to hymn 581 and we sing the words of God to us. I love you and you are mine.